Good afternoon and welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii. You're watching Where the Road Leads, a program hosted normally by our good friend Ted Ralston, who is not with us today because he's traveling in Alabama working on his project on unmanned vehicles. And so I'm here, Doug Martin, sitting in for Ted today. I've been with you before and with Ted on this program. I am the head of the Development International NGO based here in Hawaii. And I have with me my guests here, Dr. Ken Kaneshiro from the University of Hawaii, the director of the Center for Conservation and Training at the university, Dr. Herb Lee, who is the executive director of the Pacific America Foundation. And we have with us via Skype here on the monitor, Dr. Kevin Montgomery, who is the head of collaborate.org, which is a very, very high-tech database that ties a lot of things in the world together. We're talking today about a topic that we brought up before. We're talking about the Hawaii Exemplary State Initiative, a very, very innovative process, community collaborative process. Since we were here before, the Hawaii Exemplary State Initiative is now been formalized and is the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation. And so we're very anxious to bring you up to date and tell everything that's happened on this momentous foundation since we were last here. The Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation is something that was the brainchild of three of our guests here, two of our guests here, Dr. Kaneshiro and Dr. Montgomery, in conjunction with Major General Darrell Wong, the Adjutant General of the Hawaii National Guard. And I would say that it's interesting to note that this community empowerment initiative was a brainchild in many ways of General Wong in his role as the Adjutant General of the National Guard. Now, it's an interesting connection because people think, well, why would a military general be a person doing community empowerment? And it's a very, very simple concept. General Wong looks at his charge as being the head of the National Guard, which is the civil defense of our community, and says, what are the great challenges? If we're defending our community, what are today's great challenges? Well, this isn't 1941 anymore, and another attack on Pearl Harbor is not very likely. However, we do face very, very real challenges, and in many ways, ones that could be much more serious than that 1941 event, in the sense of the changes we have with climate change and the vulnerability we have being an island culture here. So General Wong has looked at his charge as being the head of our civil defense and saying the way this community can be prepared, can be resilient for the real challenges that it faces, is looking at what it means to be an island community in this day and age, 2014, and the challenges that we face there. Also, in Hawaii, we have many similarities to the rest of the Pacific Rim. However, we have unique opportunities here. No place else in the Pacific, and probably no place else in the world, do we have the great richness of cultural diversity that we have here. So we have not only the richness of the physical universe with us, but we have the richness of the entire cultural universe as well. So General Wong said that what we need to do if we're really going to be resilient as a society is we need to look at how do we mobilize the community? How does the community look at its own resilience, its own sustainability, and therefore its own empowerment and its own betterment through preparedness for those things that could befall it. And with that thought in mind, he began talking with Ken and with Kevin, and they got this idea, well, an exemplary state initiative where we would look at the different groups, the civil society groups and the different organizations in the community and think, how can we together be prepared? How can we come together with a conscious preparation for that which would be challenges to our community? And as I say, it's the thing that makes it unique is not identifying what organization or what government agency has responsibility, but a very different approach. It's like, how do you take a systems approach, a cultural systems approach, a social systems approach in terms of the different groups within our community, the different resources we have, the technical capabilities that we have, and all the various government resources. How do we integrate those? And that all starts with communication. and communications and planning. And from that concept, you had the birth of the Hawaii's Exemplary State Initiative, which we're, again, very proud to say is now the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation. I mentioned that that's a big development since the last time we were on here talking about the initiative. We have had lots of new developments even within the week. So we're very excited about the opportunity to share with you some of those changes and discuss further about what this foundation will do. We're also extremely anxious to get the information out to the community because, as I say, it's the systems approach of involving community, whomever you are in the community, that whatever organization you're part of or whatever community sector you're part of, they're ultimately our community resilience and our sustainability and our empowerment is a shared and a collective activity. So with that, I would like to get a start here by asking Ken, if he would, to do a recap on some of the salient features of our foundation and some of the new things that have been going on just lately.
Thanks, Doug, and thanks for inviting me to participate in this show again. Yeah, as Doug mentioned, this whole exemplary state concept is the brainchild of Major General Darrell Wong. And when he first brought me into the loop as far as his ideas, the main area that I was very interested in coming from the university community is in education. And so how do we bring the broader community engaged in the kinds of issues that Doug just mentioned about sustainability, resilience, and so on, things that really cuts across all of society, you know, whether it's education or it's business or public health or civil defense, et cetera. How do we really engage the community? And I thought that the best way, perhaps, to do this is to engage the kids, the K-12 students, which we have had a project a number of years ago, which was very successful, in which we engaged the K-12 community in collecting the kinds of data and information, scientifically valid data information, that were very relevant to the community in which the schools were located. So that's how I really got involved, and I've been really excited about taking a program like this at a statewide level and perhaps use it as a model for elsewhere in the nation or at the global scale. As Doug mentioned, there's been a number of developments. The last time we met on this program, maybe 2 or 3 months ago now, as Doug mentioned, we have now established, formalized and established a nonprofit organization called the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation. And in fact, Dr. Kevin Montgomery, as well as Major General Wong, are members of the board of directors. And we have about a dozen or so members of the board of advisors already participating in the project and really anxious to get it up and running in the next few months. We've also established a memorandum of understanding with a few units at the University of Hawaii, the College of Education, the Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, the Pacific Biosciences Research Center at the University of Hawaii Manoa, all have signed memorandum of understanding to partner with Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation in implementing the mission and the goals of this project. Doug also mentioned that we've had some other developments just in the past couple of days. We just had a meeting with the head of the National Security Agency, interested in cybersecurity, but as we all know, cyber and being able to communicate through computer science and so on are ways in which we connect all of our communities, all of our schools, the communities, and other aspects of society. And so what the head of the NSA in Hawaii was proposing was to bring resources to develop a major program in cyber education, all the way from the K-12 level all the way up to the college level, so that they can fill high-level positions in this field of cybersecurity, which are vacant at the moment. But because there's no capacity, there's no people, enough people trained in this area to fill those positions. So we're pretty excited about the idea of including a cybersecurity, a cyber literacy program that will complement the Hawaii Exemplary State initiative. So that's something new. The other very new development is that Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation has now been integrated into the proposed presidential center, the part of the Obama Library Initiative proposal. And I just got confirmation yesterday that the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation has been included in the proposal to the Obama Family Foundation. So these are all exciting developments. It's continued to add to the momentum that we've already been developing in the last few months. So it's absolutely exciting to be part of this.
Yeah, that's all very, very exciting. And as Ken said, there's a lot happening very quickly here. The whole concept of the Exemplary State Initiative has really, really taken off here with the founding of the foundation, and now also these new alliances through the Memorandum of Understanding that have been put together. Herb, if you would you talk a little bit about the community aspect of this? As I say, it's great that we have community involved and there's the outreach to the different kinds of organizations and agencies, but I think looking at the wealth of community, it's a cultural thing as well, and I think one of the things that makes Exemplary State have such an incredible opportunity here is really being able to capitalize on the incredibly rich cultural diversity we have here, both, as I say, both in terms of our historical legacy, because we have such an incredibly strong and very spiritual indigenous culture on which is the foundation of Hawaii, but we also have, in addition, we have an amazing immigrant culture that's essentially, we're a mini United Nations here in many ways. So we're a perfect kind of a test pot, if you would, for bringing all of the cultures of the world together in one very microcosmic location. And I think that really enhances the resources of the Exemplary State concept. And so if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about how you see that as being an important part of what we're doing.
Well, thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me again. I also come at it primarily from an education perspective, and I think that, the opportunity to be able to really more deeply tap into the indigenous knowledge and culture of Hawaii, which spans 1,500 years approximately, and to be able to incorporate that traditional knowledge into the 21st century and with all of the modern sciences, and then what Hawaii has become in terms of a multi-ethnic society that is representative of many, many different cultures throughout the world, and how those two things can intersect in some creative ways to really foster a transformation that I feel that we're going through right now in Hawaii in its education system, and how we can turn that into something that's relevant in helping to solve problems of the world from a global standpoint, climate change and sustainability, looking at food production and things like that, energy production. We have a wonderful, rich tradition of being, less than 200 years ago, being almost totally self-sufficient to now being very dependent on imported, energy and food and things like that. And so, I think everybody's struggling with trying to figure out, and I think we are in a really great place to be able to kind of reverse that and to really kind of value some of the traditional knowledge even more so than ever, and how that intersects with modern sciences and how we can bring that into the educational arena and really begin to inspire and connect students of all different ethnic backgrounds to understand their kuleana, or their responsibility and their stewardship responsibility in living in a very special place like Hawaii. Whether you're Hawaiian or not, we all have the same kuleana, we all have the same responsibility. And I think the power, to me, from an education standpoint, is the collaboration that I'm seeing, evolve over the last couple of decades that I've been involved in this work, and really trying to understand how we can bring the community more into the education arena so that it's not separate. And those collaborations with businesses and with INA-based or land-based organizations that have taken on the responsibility to replant the kalo, the taro, restore the ancient Hawaiian fish ponds, and contribute, and to seize the opportunity to harness the traditional knowledge again and bring that to the forefront in the 21st century has been really remarkable to me. And I think that has been the primary impetus towards this transformation and to developing systemic changes and models that we're looking at. I spent the whole day with Polynesian Voyaging Society and their whole focus on embarking and taking the concepts of Polynesian voyaging and all of the traditional knowledge and the science that goes with that, because they built a brand new canoe, called Hikianalia, that has all of the modern technical bells and whistles on a traditional voyaging canoe, and being able to now go beyond the Pacific and circumnavigate the world and be able to take some of the things that we've learned culturally and in the 21st century and to try to inspire others in the world to really take on and hopefully be inspired about the importance of that stewardship responsibility as we go forward in this century. And I'm really excited that we live in a great place that I think is the perfect place to be able to pilot some of these ideas. So I just stop there.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Herb.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short pause here, and we'll be back. You're watching Where the Road Leads, ThinkTech Hawaii.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevelin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
Good afternoon. You're watching Where the Road Leads at ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm here with my guest, Dr. Ken Kaneshiro from the University of Hawaii, Dr. Herb Lee from Pacific American Foundation, Dr. Kevin Montgomery from Collaborate.org, who is joining us via Skype from the Bay Area. Kevin, we'd like to bring you in on this discussion here. Herb was just talking about some of the aspects of Hawaii State Initiative, which is now encompassed in the Hawaii State Foundation, of which you are one of the directors and one of the founders. And we're talking about it in the sense of it's a community collaborative organization that's focused on community empowerment, but we're very much looking at it in terms of a model that can be replicated globally. It has lots of implications for its use in other communities. Herb just touched on before the break, talking about the cultural diversity here, that it's not just the rich diversity we have, but the coming together of the various cultures. So when we're speaking of the cultural diversity that we deal with, we're talking more than just about the discrete cultures living in the same community. It's that, but it's so much more. It's the interaction, it's the dynamics of the uniqueness of what is modern day Hawaii, that's all of what we come from, our various backgrounds, that and even more. Kevin, I know you've been very, very involved in the global level, and Collaborate.org is probably the single greatest vehicle at the disposal of the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation to really, really put the meaning in global outreach to that. And if you could speak a bit to that, and also the fact that you have been here since the creation, and talk about how your vision for taking that globally and what you see are the options for doing that.
Sure. So why don't I just walk your viewers through quickly kind of how we got to where we are with Hawaii Exemplary State. As you mentioned, Doug, General Wong, being the Adjutant General, is in charge of civil defense and heavily involved in it. And one evening we were talking about all the things that kept him awake at night, worried about flash floods and volcanic fog and what's going on with the alawai and infectious disease and maritime hazard and all these things that are civil defense issues. But then, as Ken and I were talking with him also, we started to talk about, yes, but we've got these education and research and biodiversity issues and conservation issues. So the idea that really hatched is, whether we're looking at defense or biodiversity and conservation or community involvement or anything, what if we could get everyone working together? What if we could make a collaboration platform where all aspects of the community can really come together and have a system that really empowers them to be so much more effective than they could ever be apart? So what if we came up with a system that was kind of an integrated environment and conservation system that also integrated together defense and security and education and research and community and business, and made it so that all of these groups could actually work together and they could even share data. So in the example of disaster management, Dr. Kaneshiro has deployed a bunch of environmental sensors all over the island for biodiversity and conservation projects. But why shouldn't the civil defense guys be able to also share that same data? And why shouldn't they be able to share their data to Ken for the work that he does? So you can see that if we could share data from sensors and people and satellite imagery and everything, we can empower people to make better decisions no matter what application they may have. So to just step back, one aspect of the exemplary state is, what if we could get everyone to work together a lot more effectively with no friction between the different organizations and people, no matter where they're geographically located or what organization they're in? But one of the problems with that is we need a platform to be able to do that, because we can't all be in the same room at the same time all the time. So that's really the idea that launched Collaborate.org, is what if we could take these groups, no matter where they are, in whatever organization, wherever they are geographically in the world, and bring them together and empower them with collaboration tools, things like forums and blogs and video conferencing. Even this interview right now could be done through Collaborate.org, through the video conferencing system built in. But then also, what if the system had tons and tons of data in it to empower us to make better decisions? So Collaborate.org has over 2 million layers of data of all types, sensors and satellite imagery and everything. And the whole idea is, what if we had a collaboration platform like this that people could use to do really, really important things? Like what we're talking about here with Exemplary State. The Exemplary State project, and one of the reasons why I'm so excited about it, is it's really using Hawaii as a unique test bed where all of these groups can actually get together and can work together. And it's a microcosm of what we need to do at the planetary scale, where when we're looking at the big things that we need to take care of, disasters, climate change, pandemic, issues that are bigger than any one person, agency, or even government's ability to solve, what if we had a platform that could get everybody in the world working together on these things? To allow people to connect with our other people, share their data, share their resources, and really change the world. So that's a good overview of kind of Collaborate.org and what we're trying to do at the global scale, from things from climate change and pandemics and disasters and even earthquake forecasting I was talking about before. What if we could then use Hawaii as the test bed where we incubate all this and show the rest of the world, this is what we could do if we could work together. This is what we could do if we could share our resources and have 1 + 1 = 10 instead of 2.
That's very, very exciting. Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin, for that. It's clear to see that we're talking about community empowerment, and we're talking about community empowerment on a global sense. And my organization, Development International, we're very much focused on the fact that global development is nothing more than community empowerment on a global scale. And community empowerment is global development. So they are one and the same. It's just the level that you're looking at. And what we're talking about doing here in Hawaii by bringing groups together, and the key word, and again, Kevin mentioned, it's the communication. Communication is the glue that holds us all together as individuals, as members of groups and organizations and agencies of different interests, different skills. It's the communications and the coordination that makes this all possible. And I really feel that like Exemplary State is the ideal way, and the things that you've been hearing here about the ways that Exemplary State is reaching out throughout the community, I think put a really good focus on what that can do. It's as Ken would say, it's all down to a systems approach. If you take a systems approach to it and everything's looked at in an integrated fashion, it's amazing what you can do, because then you have the coordination rather than, as what Kevin said, different channels, people doing things on their own. It's that communication that brings it together and coordinates everything that's really the nature of what Exemplary State's all about.
So, yeah, I mean, a key aspect of Exemplary State is for all of these various aspects of society, whether it's education or it's business or public health or disaster management, all of these entities need to fully understand that we're all interdependent of each other. And there has to be better communication among these different communities, as well as you said, more coordinated action in order to address the issues such as climate change and sustainability, resilience, and so on.
I think that's a key word that you have there, Ken, the interdependency that we have, and recognizing that, and perhaps if there one of the most important messages we could put out to the general public is to be aware of our interdependency, no matter how well connected we are in the community, at what level we're operating. It's that interconnectedness. We all are inexorably part of each other. There's none of us no organization, none of us as individuals that are unto ourselves. And I think Exemplary State is showing, it's providing a great way forward how we can make that, recognizing that interdependency can be a very positive thing.
It reminds me of an old Hawaiian Olelo Noia or wise saying, "Aohe pau ka ike ika halau ho'okahi," which means not all knowledge is learned in one school. So I think,
Excellent.
you know, when we look at collaboration, we're also looking at the collective impact today. That's where we're going. You know, that's
Right.
what Ken is alluding to, and that, you know, not any one entity has all of the knowledge or all of the information, and we don't want to reinvent wheels, because there are so many opportunities for success that's happening in Hawaii in so many different aspects of the system. How can we take it to a higher level and to be able to, you know, people see how collectively we can collaborate together and see the successes and how it relates to each other, and really look at the commonalities that have always been there, but maybe not as obvious. You know, I think that is one of the profound things that we can use that is scalable, you know, in many other places. That's also very cultural.
That's interesting what you say about the scalability as well. We are a very small microcosmic group here, but we're also aware that Exemplary State, the model that's being put together, here's something that's not exclusive to a small community that we have here in Oahu or even the state of Hawaii, but as you say, Herb, the scalability.
Right.
Those things that we're talking about that will make Exemplary State such a great attribute for this community can be scaled to any size community. And when we speak of community, even though we're focusing here on our local community, we really can look at concentric circles of community clear out to the global community.
Sure.
And I think that's what we're doing here. Everything we're doing, the interdependency focus that we have is something that works at every level. And I think that's, and certainly Kevin's showing us through collaborate.org how we can literally be together in real time as a global community. And I think that's an exciting thing about it.
For sure. And one aspect that I think it is important to point out too is, I mean, I'm a technologist. I love technology. I'm here in Silicon Valley in the heart of it right now. But the technology should empower us to do things. And so that's why at collaborate.org, the tagline is connect, share, change the world. It's really about connecting people. A lot of the issues that we all face, we need to connect with the right people and share the resources that we have to be much more effective. And that's how we can really coordinate our actions and really change the world. And as was mentioned just a moment ago, I think that more ancient Hawaiians actually had the understanding of interdependency a lot more. And in some ways, we've created these silos of excellence now that we need to be able to interlink and break down in order for us to accomplish something much greater than any individual organization or individual could do by themselves. And the technology should empower that, not be the focus of that.
Right.
Excellent. Very true.
Very true.
I wanted to just go back to the whole issue of scalability. Even though we have the opportunity to develop a model here and then, you know, scale it up at the global level, to the global level, we still need to be cognizant that within each community there are you know, different issues and different ways in which local communities address these kinds of issues. So, you know, one of our key parts of our education program is place-based STEM research and education of relevance. So it's focusing on what's important to the local community, even though, again, the idea can be scaled up to the global level. It's still very different between communities.
Yes.
And they need to be able to be aware of that and address it. You know, you can't just put something that you may be applying in Waimanalo to Alawai, for example. You know, it's the same kinds of, maybe the same kinds of issue, but you know, Waimanalo is, you got more rural, whereas Alawai, you got a more urban situation. And so the issues are slightly different, the people that's living there are slightly different, and the way we approach it has to be taken into account the differences in these local communities.
Excellent point. When we come back, I'd like to pick up on what Ken's talking about here, because I think that concept of the scalability yet the variation for community to community sensitivities is a very important issue. So we'll start with that when we come back. You're watching Where the Road Leads on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Of the people, they need to identify with the solution too, and have ownership of it as well. So,
Okay.
Absolutely true.
You're on there.
Okay, we're back where the road leads, ThinkTech Hawaii. We were right in the middle of a discussion. We cut off here, and I'm sorry about it, you viewers out there. We continued without you. So we're very pleased to say we're having a great discussion, but we decided we're going to let you in on it too. So back, I want to pick up where we left off there. Ken had made the comment about that even though we're talking about this something that's globally scalable, that doesn't mean that each solution or each approach is necessarily relevant for each community. And I think the key there, and this is a part of what the exemplary state's looking at, is we're not talking about exporting solutions, we're talking about exporting the concept of collaboration and communication. In other words, it's the approach is what is universal, and the solutions and how that's done, that's very much a local thing. Kenneth even made the comment that it's not even Oahu is one community, but if you take the Windward Coast versus over here on our side, those are very different communities. And so you might have the same problem, but because they're different communities and we're made up of people, the appropriate solution, which always has to be appropriate in the context, in the social and cultural context, might be very different. So what we're talking about with replicating models of exemplary state are how to do that, how to coordinate, how to communicate, how to come together as a community to make those decisions that are very much community-based. And so if you want to pick up where, let's see, I think Herb, I can't remember where we left the viewers behind and just kept going.
Let me sort of say something so that I think will segue perfectly with what Herb wants to say. But you know, we've always used the Ahupua'a model, you know, the mountain to sea, and how the traditional Hawaiian culture actually used the division of land, mountain to sea, in conducting the best practices in natural resource management. And you know, when a visitor comes into a Ahupua'a from a neighboring Ahupua'a, you know, they do a sort of ask for permission from the ancestors in, you know, doing a study or, you know, entering into this area. And so it's very different from what that person, the visitor, might have been doing in his Ahupua'a, but they ask for permission to do the work or to learn from this particular Ahupua'a. And so I think we've learned a lot from the traditional culture in these kinds of place-based issues.
And you know, so on our island alone, I think I can't remember what the number was, maybe 60 or 80 ahupua'a on Oahu only. So if you think about it that way, you know, each ahupua'a had their own sort of personality. They had their own different geophysical conditions. Maybe they grew different things, but in the process of the communication, you know, when we were not in wartime, there was a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of bartering. There was a lot of trading. for other goods and things to eat. And so again, traditional, fast forward to today, we are still kind of in a mode. I think some of the things that we need to get back to is really trying to understand, where resources, where food comes from. And I think a lot of our children, you ask them where food comes from and they say it's a store, and they forget about that traditional connection, and doing that. But I think getting back to the scalability idea and about the importance of understanding ownership and place and respecting, the differences in how people navigate and raise resources and things like that, I think is really important, because that is an anchor and that is the way to respect, their particular solution for problems that, again, as you said, maybe the approach is something that is scalable, but the execution and the implementation of the solutions may be much more targeted to specific geophysical conditions or the way people, observed and drew the knowledge over the generations on how to resolve problems and to flourish, in that kind of society. And I think we're kind of in the same place today. We're trying to figure out, now we know that the planet is an island, that it has finite resources, and we cannot, not manage it well. We all have a responsibility, and that's why I think we all have something to share with each other. And I think Hawaii, we have many different microclimates in Hawaii that are representative of a majority of the planet. And we have something, I think, very unique to offer the world in terms of approaches and how we've executed and implemented some of those things.
And maybe if I could take this up to a more global level, I mean, you really have to have, you have to engage with people so that they have some ownership of the solution also for it to be really successful. And that's something we've seen across lots of things, even with disaster management and with FEMA, et cetera. And you almost have to get the idea into people's head, you are the one you're waiting for. We are the ones we're waiting for. We are all part of this solution, and we need to work together and be able to respect that diversity of opinion and experience, because we're all part of this solution. Otherwise, if someone else brings the solution in and drops it in your lap, that's not mine, I don't identify with it, I'm not part of it. But it's that community resilience and self-empowerment of the individual and the community that I think is a really critical aspect for making something that's actually going to be successful and really ultimately useful and positive.
Truly, truly. Yeah, that's where the empowerment truly comes in. It's, you couldn't have empowerment if you didn't have ownership, if there's not this sense that it's something that's from the community. Even if the ideas come from somewhere else, it's the idea of internalizing them. So it's not quite so important to say, well, my culture discovered this, or my culture invented this, or this is our way. It's the internalizing those values. And one of the interesting things about our society here in Hawaii, because we have such an interesting mix, literally mix, not just because we have all the different cultures here, but that we're all together here, is that we have that really rich opportunity to sample from each other and learn new ways of seeing things that we can then take in part of our own. And I think looking at Hawaii as a contemporary society, it's very interesting, because it's something that's built on the traditional indigenous Hawaii culture, and so many of those incredibly strong values have then permeated through the rest of us. In our modern day society here, many of us who are not from a traditional Hawaiian background have taken these things on. Sometimes it's even subconscious. I don't think we realize it, because there's a certain thing about the aloha of living here. When you do that, it sort of gets in your blood, if you would, and that's a really exciting thing.
Ken, I think a good example of this might be the Alawai and what you're doing with Iolani School, and how the school kids have really identified together and become part of the community that's saving itself. So you may want to discuss that.
Yeah, we've been working with Iolani School for about the past 4 years now, and especially the AP biology class has set up a stream monitoring system of the quarter-mile length of Manoa Stream that borders the campus. And they've been collecting data, biological, both macro and microbiological, physical data, environmental data, all of which is they're trying to correlate. We've got a weather station on their campus, and they're correlating all of these kinds of changes in all of these different parameters, maybe may be correlated with weather patterns. So, if the project was a 1 year or 2 year or maybe even a 5 year project, it probably wouldn't mean anything, but they are committed to carrying this on for decades, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And in that time scale, the data that the students at Iolani are collecting, we'll begin to see patterns of change, perhaps correlated with global warming or whatever. And it's going to contribute to the scientific database that, as far as I know, there's not very many studies of this nature on a time scale that the K-12 kids, especially at Iolani, and then we're hoping to take this to the K-12 community at the statewide level, can really help us build that database of information that's going to address these global issues,
problems. Yeah.
global problems.
I love
So-
that.
so-
I love that. I just absolutely love that opportunity for high school kids to make a meaningful difference as part of their
Even
education.
even elementary school kids
Yeah.
will be involved.
So let me put a fine point on this, because I think it's a really subtle but incredibly important point. These kids have identity with this. They took
Yes.
ownership.
Right.
They took responsibility
Exactly.
for their own stream, their own ahupua'a,
Right.
going into the future. School kids, elementary, high school. That's exactly what you need, is to own this. This is my problem. This is my community. This is where I am.
Yep.
I need to help make it better.
That's why it's an exemplary state initiative.
If everybody in the world could do what those kids are doing, we would be in a very good place.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank my guests. It looks like we're out of time here. We're just getting started, but we'll probably continue on without you out there in viewer land. But we promise we'll be back. We'll keep you updated on this. As we say, this is a very much an organic and growing initiative now through the foundation, the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation. And I want to thank my guests again, Dr. Ken Kaneshiro, Dr. Herb Lee, Dr. Kevin Montgomery with us in the Bay Area. Again, you're watching Where the Road Leads on ThinkTech Hawaii. Thanks again. We'll see you another time.